This is the Battenfield Motor Car Company in Amarillo, Texas. Here recently, while business for the industry was off, sales were up over 60%. Since the purpose of American Motor Sales Training Releases is to bring to your attention successful selling techniques that you can use, we decided to get the Battenfield story for you. This is Jay Battenfield in the office of his dealership. We asked him what he had done to bring about this phenomenal increase in sales.
We were faced by a soft market. Everybody was cutting prices. They were over-allowing, making exaggerated claims, and it became impossible for us to compete on this kind of basis. Then one day something happened that made me believe that maybe we weren't doing the right kind of selling job. A woman customer came in because of one of our used car ads. She was asked whether she'd like to trade up to a new Rambler. She said she wouldn't think of a Rambler. She said she just didn't feel that Rambler was the kind of car she ought to have. Talking with her brought out that she actually knew very little about Rambler, and apparently her attitude was not uncommon. To me, this was proof enough that we weren't getting across to buyers the greater usefulness and basic excellence of Rambler. I asked a number of buyers exactly what they wanted in a new car. Price was not the factor. What they wanted was good, sound value. Buyers were confused by advertising claims and by misrepresented low prices. That's why price advertising didn't attract them at all. They'd learned that the advertised price wasn't the price they'd have to pay, and that the advertised features weren't exactly as they were represented. I felt that today's buyer is more interested in value, sound construction, usefulness, and good looks, rather than first cost. And they definitely want to know about the benefits and advantages of a car they're considering. My salesmen were a part of the problem. Now, they're all exceptionally good men. But since new car announcement time, they'd become a little over-familiar with the product. They weren't as enthusiastic as they were at announcement time. And I think some of our competitors' advertising had affected them. They didn't really believe that Rambler was as excellent as it's claimed to be. I knew that if they could find out the differences in how competitors' cars are built, they'd be able to sell Rambler a lot better. Well, we all know that you have to look at more than sheet metal to see the differences. All our competitors do a pretty good job on appearance. But very few people ever get the chance to look under a car, to see what we mean when we say Rambler's excellence. And once a customer is convinced that Rambler is superior, our selling approach would be just that much stronger. Well, that's how we got started on our lube rack test promotion. Now, this is a way to sell by comparison. We built a platform on the corner of our lot. It's 7 feet high, and 2 ramps lead to the top at about a 25-degree angle. The idea is that we can take a customer under the rack and compare 2 cars at one time, side by side. One thing we found out right away was that we could compare performance, too. Both the Classic 6 and the American could be stopped on the 25-degree ramp and then driven the rest of the way up. But if we stopped the Corvair, Falcon, Comet, Lancer, or Valiant halfway up the ramp, they couldn't make it to the top. We had to roll them back down the ramp to get a running start to make it to the top. That was sure proof for any customer of Rambler's better power, superior performance, and the correct ratio of power to weight. As we developed our plan, we found out a lot of things. So many that it would be difficult to use all of them in any one sales situation.
Out at the rack, signs announce to everyone that Battenfield means business. We dare you to compare, and don't get hung up. Get the facts. Displays show the bonded brake lining of Rambler and the riveted lining from Falcon, the large front wheel bearings of Rambler and the smaller front wheel bearings of Falcon, the deep coiled spring cushions in Rambler seats and the zigzag spring cushion seats of competitors. The demonstration platform and the display boards attract lots of foot traffic. But the best way to see how Battenfield salesmen use the demonstration platform is to follow a salesman as he talks with a customer. Let's watch as salesman Boyd Robbins approaches Mr. Barry, who was attracted by the demonstration platform and was looking at the display. One important thing was stressed by Mr. Battenfield. The purpose of the demonstration rack is not to criticize competition. The idea is to use competition only to prove that Rambler has basic excellence. At the time Boyd Robbins met Mr. Barry, a Rambler and a Falcon were on the demonstration platform. A Corvair, Lancer, F-85, as well as a Comet were on the ramps. Boyd took Mr. Barry under the Falcon to point out some comparative differences. Boyd pointed out Rambler's deep coil suspension as opposed to Falcon, the much lighter steering linkage on Falcon as opposed to American. The frame rails on Falcon stop under the rear seat floorboard. On American, double-size, double-strength box girders extend the full length of the car. On the American, the cables, gas line, and other vital tubing are fully protected, but they are unprotected on Falcon. Falcon has a 14-gallon gasoline tank. The American has a 20-gallon tank. Notice the closeness of the muffler to the gas tank. Falcon's muffler is a conventional type. American has the large, heavy-duty ceramic armored muffler and tailpipe, guaranteed as long as the original owner has it. Falcon has 4-lug, 13-inch wheels. American has 5-lug, 15-inch wheels. The larger wheels of the American mean the tires have to turn fewer times, resulting in longer tire life. You'll notice that Boyd has been pointing out these facts with a cane. Every salesman at Battenfield carries a cane. It is a symbol of, "We dare you to compare." After completing the comparison under the cars, Boyd took Mr. Barry up the stairs to the top of the rack to examine other comparative facts. The small-looking battery in Falcon and the large battery in Rambler. The small radiator core in Falcon and the much larger radiator core in Rambler. The shock absorbers are straight up and down in Falcon. Rambler deep coil front suspension has shock absorbers angled out for greater stability. The Falcon front seat is bolted to the floor. It can't be easily removed, and it can't be reclined or adjusted individually like the front seat available on the American. The Falcon has a hand choke, no cigar lighter, and no glove box door lock. The American has an automatic choke, a cigar lighter, and a lock on the glove box. The Falcon has a big hump and deep floor wells, where the American has a small hump and shallow wells. The Falcon has rotary door locks, while Rambler has a positive cam action door lock. The Falcon doors have a single seal and a cotton wind cord. The American has dual seals and a vinyl-covered wind cord. The Falcon rear seat cushion does not sit in a seat frame as in the American, and Falcon uses low-cost zigzag springs, while American uses deep-coiled seat springs. The floor of the Falcon trunk is the gasoline tank. The filler elbow has a rubber connector. Both are subject to punctures with danger of fire. The Falcon trunk liner is also the fender panel, and there's a masonite fender well cover. The Rambler has a trunk liner that's separate from the fender, giving it far greater strength. The spare tire in the Rambler is mounted vertically. In the Falcon, it's mounted flat and uses up more trunk space. Boyd shows Mr. Barry how Falcon stuffs plastic bags of insulation back of the wheel housing to dampen noise and vibration. Later, Boyd has Mr. Barry watch the front fender vibrate as he slams the door. On the American, bumper guards are standard equipment, and wheel discs are standard on all Rambler customs. On Falcon, bumper guards and wheel discs are always extra cost equipment. Boyd points out that the trunk sill height is greater in Falcon than in Rambler. This means heavy objects have to be lifted a lot higher to get them into the Falcon trunk. The American grill has a rugged die-cast frame, while the Falcon grill is a mere stamping. If Mr. Barry hadn't been convinced at that point, Boyd would take the opportunity to put the Lancer on the demonstration rack and go underneath it. In Lancer, the rods and construction of torsion air are compared with Rambler's deep coil front suspension. As in the Falcon, the frame rails are abbreviated. There is no support other than the sheet metal floor panel. The Lancer's spill-out glove box has no lock. The front seat is rigidly bolted to the floor. There's a big hump and no cigar lighter as standard equipment. Lancer uses zigzag springs in the rear seat. The package shelf is fiberboard, and doors have rotary locks. The Lancer door catch is exposed where it can catch and tear people's clothes. Rambler's door catch is fully enclosed. The front vent windows have no frame, and there's no garnish molding on the inside of the windshield. In the trunk, the filler neck cuts diagonally across the trunk space and is completely exposed. The floor pan of the trunk is joined to the side panels with dum-dum and caulking in such a way that leaks can readily occur. The comparative story on Corvair is very similar to that of Falcon and Lancer. The front-mounted gasoline tank extends below the front assembly cross brace, making it vulnerable to punctures. The engine oil pan assembly is also mounted low, which makes it susceptible to damage. There is limited space in the front trunk compartment, and its peculiar shape limits its usefulness. The spare tire is mounted over the engine, where the heat of the engine may shorten its life. Fan belt failure could be very costly. Dual carburetors are difficult to synchronize, and the unique engine design could prove difficult to service. The wind cord is a rubber molding which is placed over the edge of the pillar post. It can simply be lifted out. This same thing is true of the Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac compacts. The same basic approach is taken with BOP compacts. The F-85 has a peculiar rear suspension design. Also in the F-85, the muffler is mounted close to the gasoline tank. And although it's supposed to be a luxury compact like the Lancer, a large sheet of fiberboard is used to cover the spare tire, and other pieces are used to cover the wheel wells. The F-85 also uses zigzag seat springs. And Boyd always covers Rambler's cushioned acoustical fiberglass ceiling, as opposed to the ordinary headliners used in other compacts. The radical, flexible drive shaft design on the Pontiac Tempest is subject to undue stresses. Contrast the solid torque tube drive of the Rambler. After finishing at the demonstration platform, Boyd returns to the showroom with Mr. Barry. There he can really sell the American as representing the very best in a smaller compact car. Or he can move to the Classic, which he emphasizes as the only compact car with full room for 6 big 6-footers. But whatever the case, Mr. Battenfield had this to say about it.
We've found we can make a buyer out of a shopper once he's had a chance to study the actual differences between Rambler and competitive makes.
We asked Mr. Battenfield about demonstration.
All of my salesmen like to get the customer to take a short ride. This proves maneuverability, handling ease, and the outstandingly comfortable ride of Rambler.
We asked Mr. Battenfield if his competitors were interested in his program.
Very much so. At their own request, we did our comparison for their salesmen, and it's helped us. We've found that some Ford salesmen were telling people that our cushioned acoustical fiberglass ceiling was a cardboard liner. After seeing it, they knew better.
We asked if he would recommend that others do a similar thing.
Yes, I very definitely would. I'm convinced that the way to sell is to make value comparisons. This is the way to beat the price cutters, meet competition, and still set a customer up for a good deal.
Is the demonstration platform expensive, and is it necessary?
Building a demonstration platform is comparatively inexpensive. But you can make excellent comparisons with the X-ray books, with replacement parts, or even with photographs. We've found that the demonstration platform just can't be equaled in an advertising sense. And as a sales tool, well, it's the envy of every competitive salesman in town.
Should you make a competitive comparison on, say, a Falcon or competitive car every time you make a presentation?
Not necessarily. Selling is to overcome objections, not to simply show up our competitors' inferiorities.
How do you promote your program?
On the radio, mostly. Our spots reach people in their cars. We've had people hear the spot and drive right to our place of business. Although our We Dare You to Compare newspaper ads are run regularly, too.
Do you think if someone else wanted to do this kind of thing that they'd need a rack as elaborate as yours?
No, I don't think so. The rack attracts attention and brings people in. You need something to do that. But you wouldn't need the rack to make a side-by-side demonstration. I think it's a good idea to figure out some way to see under the cars. But even a couple of jacks or an inclined platform and mirrors would do that job.
And there you have it. Comparative selling. the way the salesmen at J. Battenfield's increased sales 66 2/3% in 1 month. That's one way of showing the public and competition that Battenfield meant business and that Rambler means business.